Hi, I'm Dr. Gilles LaMarche, your host for this edition of the Life Vision Project. And I am so thrilled today to have with me one of my favorite chiropractors on the planet, Dr. Patrick Gentempo. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Jill. Great to be here with you and with everybody who's watching.
It's such a pleasure to have you with us. So today we're going to talk about philosophy and who needs it. You know, if people have a core belief, but have somehow been convinced that they have to abandon their beliefs to move forward, how would you suggest they begin?
Well, that's one scenario you described, that, they have a certain core belief and then they have to abandon it for what they might think are practical purposes. I'll get into examples of that in more detail. More tragic than that, and probably more common than that, is people who are unclear as to what their beliefs are. So, in essence, here's the thing about philosophy. Everybody has a philosophy, and this is, in chiropractic, this is especially a poignant issue. If you look around and you look at varying schools, right? Oh, that's a philosophical school. That's a mechanistic school. There's these things are appended as labels to varying factions, academically varying factions, scientifically varying factions from the practice side. Here's the thing that everybody should know. Everybody has a philosophy. You who are watching this right now have a philosophy, and that philosophy is driving your choices, your actions, and your outcomes, whether you know it or not. So the real issue is not, do you have a philosophy? The question is, are you conscious of your philosophy? To what extent? And is it serving your interest in a productive way? Or do you have contradictions in your philosophy that are causing a breakdown in your goal achievement? So Ayn Rand, the philosopher, basically said it best when identifying the practicality of philosophy. She said, when you have contradictions in your basic philosophical premises, the only possible result is destruction, and the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction.
So when you look at that, what I'm hearing you say is that, everybody's got a philosophy, of course, but a clear philosophical premise is always important, and having people understand what their philosophy is also really important. So what if they don't really understand it? And secondly, what if the premise that they hold is actually false?
Well, so we'll dig in a little deep here. Are these guys ready to go deep on this stuff?
I think so.
So we could skim the surface. We'll go a little bit deeper. And let me just have you understand a couple of things. You do not master philosophy in a half hour or an hour or a weekend. I've been literally immersed in it for over 30 years, and I am still working on it. It's like breathing. It's a part of your life, and the more you can refine it, the more you grow. So you use the word premise, and one of the presentations I give is called The Power of Premise. A premise is a belief element that's driving your choices and actions, whether you know it or not. And if your premises are, let's say, aligned, to use a chiropractic construct, you're going to have great outcomes, or you're going to move towards your goals. If your premises are in conflict, then you're going to have struggle and pain. So, just to give an example, let's say that the premises that you have in your life, in your personal life, sort of move you in this direction, but the premises that you hold and the values that come from them in your professional and career life are kind of pulling you in this direction. You can see over time you're trying to move simultaneously in varying important categories of your life in multiple directions at once. The consequence of that is that you get to a point of what I call maximum tension, where you're stuck. And so many people will be stuck in their life, and they'll go to seminars to try to learn new stuff, to try to grow their practice, or go to a seminar on relationships, or go to a seminar on money and finance, or go to a seminar on spirituality, what have you. The reality is they already know things they could be doing that would make parts of their life better, but they're not doing it. So the question isn't, what new things do I need to learn to do? The more fundamental question is, Why am I at a point of maximum tension where I don't do what I know? And that comes from contradiction in between varying parts of your life. Now, you talked about what if your premise is wrong? Well, there's multiple aspects of wrong. Meaning, let's say that, I'll put it this way. There is such a thing as reality-based contradictions, meaning that your premise versus what's true from a point of physics, and point of laws of the universe, are not, they're malaligned. In other words, let's say you hold the premise that that gravity is a figment of your imagination, and I'll prove it by walking off a roof. So you may hold the premise that gravity is not a physical reality that imposes its forces upon me, but you'd be wrong,
Yes.
and you could die as a result of that. That would be a reality-based contradiction. Now, we can talk about reality. I'll give you maybe a more practical example in healthcare. My cousin, who is, I think, 51 or 52 right now, over 20 years ago, was diagnosed with a autoimmune disorder that you might have heard of, lupus. And with this diagnosis, she was treated for over 2 decades. You're talking steroids, you're talking about injections in her eyes, you're talking about really pretty nasty stuff that made it so that she could not bear children. She, blown up by the steroids, completely debilitated her lifestyle. But the premise in part was that when you have this type of a disease, if you don't treat it properly, it could kill you. So we have to manage it through all of these pretty grotesque interventions. She just found out about 3 months ago that it was a misdiagnosis. She never had.
Oh my gosh.
So, and incidentally, that what she had was a lymphoma, was a form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is typically very treatable, but now is in stage 4 and is spread throughout her body. And she's fighting for her life. That is a reality-based contradiction. You think you have lupus. You're treated for 20 years of lupus. Your life is destroyed as a result. You never have the joy of children. And the initial premise that started it all
was wrong.
That's a reality-based contradiction. Now, so if your premises, as much as you might be passionate about them, if they are not aligned with reality, you're going enthusiastically in the wrong direction. And over some period of time, you're going to pay a price for that. And as Rand said, the level of the contradiction, the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction. That's a pretty big level of contradiction. And as a result, the level of destruction is incomprehensible. Now, let's talk about internal contradictions. Internal contradictions are basically self-inflicted as a consequence of lack of conscious living. For example, I have a chiropractor who approaches me, this is not one, but dozens of times, and they're saying to me, I want a lifetime family wellness care practice. I want people who come in to get adjusted spinal correction, stay for a lifetime, not depend on insurance, pay me, et cetera, et cetera. But people in my town only come in for back pain. I've tried in all these different ways to create that practice. It's never worked. People just want to get their back pain fixed and leave, et cetera. And I'd be like on a break, I'd say, give me a card, we'll follow up, what have you. And they hand me a business card that says, Main Street Back and Neck Pain Center.
Contradiction!
Can you see the contradiction? So what's the contradiction? My vision and my values tell me that I want to deliver a lifetime family wellness care or subluxation correction practice, call it what you want. But they call themselves a back and neck pain practice. That's a contradiction. And you will devolve to the level of the contradiction, which is why they only get back and neck pain patients. Because they create a brand that is identifying who they are to their public, but in their mind, in their values, there's something else. That's a complete contradiction. Another example, maybe it's a little higher level. Let's say, oh, they solve that, they go to higher levels. And let's say that, hey, you know what, we have a pretty strong anti-drug message in our practice, meaning we think that drugs are overprescribed, overutilized, that they don't solve problems, they deal with effects and not causes, they destroy people's lives. Our goal here is to get people to self-heal through chiropractic so that they don't need drugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in your reception room, you have magazines that have what in them?
Drug ads.
Now, see, that's not an external contradiction. That's internal within the confines of your own values in life. So you can resolve that. Or maybe you have a TV on the wall, like my chiropractor I went to a few, it was more like probably 8 or 9 months ago. Maybe actually it's over a year ago if I think about it. He's got the news on in his reception room. So number one, not only was I offended by the fact that I have to walk into a place that I'm looking to get peace and centered and adjusted and into a healthy state of mind, I have to look at the trash that's on the news, but also they're running drug ads. And he took me back into to get adjusted. And I looked at him. I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "You've got drug ads and news on your TV." Oh, I had a patient who asked if I would turn the news on for her. I'm like, so the inmates are running the asylum now? Who's defining your brand? You're going to let people say, I want X. This is what you're talking about. Well, I'd like to watch the news. Well, if you're clear on your philosophy and you're clear on your values, the answer is that does not belong within these walls.
It's pretty simple. It was like in my private practice.
If you're not clear on that stuff, then suddenly you end up going down blind alleys, trying to please people and never getting any traction in your business. So those are just some examples of contradiction, understanding reality-based external contradictions versus internal philosophical contradictions within your own value system.
In my private practice, for example, people ask, how come you don't have any magazines other than health-related magazines? And it was for that exact same reason. So many chiropractors I've talked to said, get rid of all these crazy magazines you have. People don't come to you to read about sports or news or watch or read any of the trash stuff that's out there. They come to learn how you're different and how you're actually going to support their growth. And so once we as individuals are clear with the philosophy that we own and the philosophy we want to teach, we create greater value for our community, don't we?
No doubt. It's just knowing that philosophy. See, here's the point. It's not that having a back and neck pain, Main Street back and neck pain is immoral or wrong. It's just not aligned. In other words, if your purpose and values based on your foundational philosophical premises are that what you do is limited to and effective for the treatment of back pain or spinal pain, then you should be a back and neck pain center. You should get care plans that are just attend to pain eliminations. You line it up, and then you have a business. And quite frankly, there's some very successful back and neck pain businesses out there, and they're aligned and they're consistent, and their brand is right, and their model for how they do every procedure in the office lines up. They're psychologically wrapped around. Everything has to line up. Philosophy gives you your view of reality, your rules of evidence for how you know it, and then your ethics or your values for what you do about it. And so, in essence, philosophy gives you your brand. But if your philosophy is confused, your brand is confused. You're confused. And confused minds do not buy. So if your brand is confused and nobody knows exactly why you do what you do, and people walk in and not understanding why they should be there, and I'm not moralizing, back pain, neck pain, drug therapy, stem cells, I don't give a damn what it is, but if your brand is confused, you fail. So everybody has these people with the supposed ambassadors of science and evidence-based care, they all have a philosophy. It's just I kind of lost my shit at a recent big event, public event, convention. Billed is one of the biggest in the world, where I was on a panel about evidence-based care and how chiropractors need to practice evidence-based care, and nobody should be showing up and practicing things that aren't evidence-based. And it was my turn to speak, and I got up and I said, Basically, are you people this dumb? Do you think anybody gets up in the morning and says, I think I'll do something today that I have no evidence for it, I don't think is right or that it works? It's not a question of people practicing evidence-based. Nobody says, I'm going to practice non-evidence-based care. What they conclude is, what will you accept as evidence? That's the question. We should be debating not should there be evidence-based care or not evidence-based care. The question is, what do you accept as evidence? And that is a philosophical question, which comes from the second branch of philosophy, epistemology, the theory of knowledge. So the idea is that everybody is taking a philosophical position when they're arguing these issues, and they don't even know it. So I get, you can tell I get heated up. Don't mistake my passion for anger. Sometimes it's anger, actually, but right now I'm just passionate. So the reality is that I get heated because people talk about philosophy, like it's some obscure bad thing that only, mindless chiropractors practice, which is it's the absolute opposite. These people have a philosophy also, and they don't even know it. They don't even know what the word means, and they don't know how to apply it. So I characterize myself as an applied philosopher. The practical use of philosophy to create positive outcomes or successful outcomes in your life. Whether it's what's your philosophy of being a parent, what's your philosophy of relationships, what's your philosophy of money, what's your philosophy in spirituality, what's your philosophy in healthcare or chiropractic. You have philosophies in all these things. And if they're all in contradiction with each other, you're dealing with stress every day. If you think enough to align them, you're a successful person that has a lot of ease.
I remember you sharing a story as it relates to, what evidence are you willing to accept when you were sitting on a panel with Stephen Barrett. And some people may not know the name Stephen Barrett, but Stephen Barrett is one of the Quack Watch people. And I mean, that made me laugh, but it was such a great intersection in your conversation. So maybe take a minute to share that. And then I want to approach vitalism and science and have a short conversation about that before we end this 30-minute conversation.
Sure. Well, my interaction with Barrett back many years ago, and if you know, as Jill said, Stephen Barrett, he brags about the fact that he's chiropractic enemy number one.
Oh yes.
He wants to be a thorn in the side. So he's a medical doctor by specialty, a psychiatrist, and he basically is a stark mechanist that is very anti-vitalism, very anti-subluxation. And we were having a chiropractic pediatric convention, and it was decided that we would have a debate at this convention. And it was in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was a luncheon debate, and I was invited to be on this debate panel. And so there's a riser there in front of the entire chiropractic. And I was on the last seat was Barrett. I was on the seat right next to him. So before we started having our meal, the debate, they're putting a meal in front of us. Barrett leans over to me and kind of says, "How can chiropractors possibly justify seeing children?" And he meant it. So I could have jumped out of my chair and choked the shit out of him, which is your impulse. But I basically just looked at it. I said, "Well, Dr. Barrett, why do you have a problem with chiropractors seeing children?" And he said, "Well, there is no scientific evidence of the efficacy of chiropractic for children." And I said, again, like I said, well, yes, there is. Didn't you see this study or this study or this study? But again, I have to ask these still, Dr. Barrett, what will you accept as evidence? And they said, well, there are no randomized controlled clinical trials proving the efficacy of chiropractic. So I said, well, Dr. Barrett, if I'm not mistaken, did you have heart bypass surgery about 5 years ago? He was like looking into space. How could you know that? I said, well, there are no randomized controlled clinical trials showing the efficacy of heart bypass surgery for cardiovascular disease. Why did you decide to have that? He was literally in stunned silence for probably several seconds, 5-7 seconds. And he goes, well, he's thinking about an answer. Literally, he's looking, he's gazing up, thinking about an answer. He said, well, because that's a very clever argument. Not really. He said, however, the artery that I had clogged is called the widowmaker. And if I didn't have that surgery, I would not be here today. And I said, and you know this how? Are you telling me based deductively on your knowledge of anatomy, physiology, and biology that you know that the heart is a vital organ, it's a muscle, it requires oxygen to function, the oxygen is carried in the blood, and the vessels that carry that blood are clogged beyond a certain range, that you would not have enough oxygen for the heart to function, you would expire? Because if you're telling me deductively through anatomy and physiology and biology, your knowledge of that, that you elected to have a highly invasive, rip your chest open surgery, I will tell you that that's the exact same reason why chiropractors should see children. You cannot have it both ways, sir. And that's it. I mean, where do you go from there in the argument? There's nowhere to go. So, and that's just pointing out what I did. Did I cite any scientific literature? No. It was a philosophical issue. I pointed out a foundational contradiction where he had a more burdensome or different standard of evidence for how chiropractors should operate versus what he does to himself. So, and the debate can rage on from there, but I think you can see the foundational tenets of the debate. So that was that particular interaction. And I remember one time I heard him, I was listening, he was on a radio talk show, and he was doing his normal bullshit. And literally I picked up the phone and called the show, and I was on hold, and I said, hey, I debated this clown in Atlanta, Georgia. Let me get on the phone with him here right now in front of your audience. And they're like, okay, great. And I'm on hold, and I'm waiting, and they said, hey, Doc, you still there? Yeah, I'm still here. And my battery ran out.
Oh, no.
I never got to get that done. But anyway, that's the embarrassing.
That'll be fun because, for people watching, I mean, just think of that particular setting and imagine how you can deal with naysayers when you're in your practice, when you're in your community, when you're having conversations. Instead of just trying to prove and dump information on them, learn to ask the right questions. Because, we know there's the scientific paradigm, there's the evidence-based people, and then there's those of us who function from a vitalistic perspective who recognize that there's evidence for vitalism as well. Again, what level of evidence? Are there, double-blind controlled trials on vitalism? No. But there's a lot of clinical evidence.
Yeah, I know, actually, there are some that would help substantiate what we do, but that's only one form of evidence. And there's other forms, that we have to, and incidentally, everybody's using other forms of evidence. So,
sure, clinical experience alone.
What's that?
Clinical experience alone is a form of evidence, isn't it?
Yeah, that's observational evidence. So we have a lot of empirical, evidence, observational evidence, case study, anecdote. We have deductive starts, inductive research, randomized, clinical trials. We have outcome assessment that we do patient by patient. I spent 20 years of my career developing. Listen, I'm not an anti-science guy. I've published well over a dozen articles in peer-reviewed research journals. I've helped fund randomized controlled clinical trials. I've developed diagnostic technology I have patents on. So, I'm not somebody who says, oh, no, it's all the vibe and the feeling of things, and anything that's organized knowledge or information in scientific fashion is wrong. No, I'm the opposite of that. But it's a matter of understanding. If you don't have a philosophy guides your science.
Yeah, I mean, the two are bridged. The two have to be bridged.
Yeah, I mean, here. You can see how thick this book is, but title?
The Philosophy of Science.
Yeah, so you don't have a science. Your data that you produce out of your science is meaningless unless there's a philosophical context in which you interpret it.
So this is a perfect segue. This is a perfect segue for the last question that I have, because I want people listening in to truly get to understand the philosophical premise as it relates to science and vitalism. And so the question is, some who have been raised in science, I think back to myself, I mean, I had a Bachelor of Science before I became a chiropractor, but some people who have been raised in science may see vitalism as not being evidence-based. And for them, that could be a huge stumbling block in living a practical life, a professional life, without contradictions. So how would you approach such an issue when people are saying, well, I'm from a science background, I can't have a vitalistic practice. I'd like to, but I just don't know how to do it. It just doesn't match with me. It's not clear. How would you approach that in helping them understand that bridge?
Well, yeah, you'd have to correct terminology. to think that, as I just said earlier, to think that evidence-based means something, other than what it means, is an error in thinking. It's a matter of what will you accept as evidence. I am a vitalistic chiropractor. I approach things through the vitalistic lens, and I will have evidence debates all day long with anybody who cares to have them. I've done it publicly many, many times. Why? Because it's a matter of what you'll accept as evidence. So basically, the right way to characterize what you just said would be, if the person's saying, well, I'm evidence-based, I'm a science person, what we're saying is my view of science is mechanistic and reductionistic in nature. Therefore, I will only accept mechanistic and reductionistic forms of evidence to guide my actions. So, reductionism and the mechanistic philosophy cannot explain consciousness, cannot explain development in life. It can explain some things. Don't get me wrong, it explains a lot of things, but there's limitations. See, here's a really interesting thing in the contradiction in the mechanist thing, and I know we're trying to tie up in about less than a minute here, so I'll say it fast. The mechanists, for evidence, insist on a thing called blinded randomized controlled clinical trials, and I can't explain what that is, but I think most people who watch this understand. When you say control, how are the trials controlled? You have three groups. You have a test group who gets the intervention. You have a sham group who gets a placebo intervention. And you have a control group who gets no intervention. And you compare the outcomes. Well, here's the thing. What is the sham? What's the placebo? The placebo is somebody in their mind believes they're getting something that they're really not getting. Which you're admitting the implications of consciousness on outcomes of health. Which means that it's beyond the mechanist model. So it's interesting that they have to integrate a vitalistic understanding into their rules of evidence, but they limit their thinking to the mechanist thing. So it's a huge contradiction baked into the way they approach the world. Anyway, that's probably about as much time as I have to explain.
Yeah, and the double randomized controlled trial by itself is a contradiction with that, is what you're telling us.
With that model.
Exactly.
I think it's a good way to research. It's one good way to do research. There's others. But inherent, you cannot justify the mechanist orientation through saying that people's minds and what they think alone can change the outcome. So it makes me laugh at them. But anyway.
It's always a beautiful thing to have a conversation with you. And for all our listeners, I hope that you recognize in this short 30 minutes that you need a philosophy. You need a clear philosophy. You need to understand what your life vision truly is and how you can actually achieve that. And one of the goals of creating these modules is to actually help you do that, and then to join us every spring at our signature event in Atlanta called Life Vision. So Patrick, once again, such a great pleasure to share this 30 minutes. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us, and I'll look forward to chatting with you again real soon.